Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about the real benefits of being able to write sequences. Quite often when you're composing a piece, you've got some good idea going and it kind of starts well, and then you sort of think, well, I need a bit of a kind of fill-in spot, or I need to develop some material a little bit. Not quite sure what to write now, what to do, how do I sort of keep this moving? Well, sequences are a great way of doing things. So harmonic sequences, melodic sequences, in other words, they're patterns that we follow. So a sequence, just to be sure, could be melodic. It could be a group of 3 notes that I'm just using at different pitches. Maybe jumping up and using it somewhere else, So that could be a very simple melodic sequence. Or I could have a harmonic sequence where I'm sort of using chord 1, then chord 5 in this key, then chord 1, then chord 5 in that key, something like that. But there's one thing you can do with the circle of fifths. Now, I'm kind of assuming that if I talk about the circle of fifths, you know what it is. If you're thinking, oh dear, circle of fifths, what on earth is that about? You can find another of our videos that would explain the circle of fifths. So you might want to pause at this moment, find the video on the circle of fifths, just kind of get comfortable with that, and then you'll come back to this. The circle of fifths is an incredibly useful tool that tells us about every key we need to know about, how keys relate to each other, which keys are next door to each other, and all that kind of stuff. If you take the circle of fifths and you start at C at the top, it will go up in fifths if you go one way. So it will go C, then G, then D, then A, and then E. So C major, G major, D major, A major, E major. Every time adding a sharp. C major, no sharps. G major, 1 sharp. D major, 2 sharps. A major, 3 sharps. E major, 4 sharps. You can begin to see how this is useful. If you go down in fifths, you start adding flats. So C, you go down a fifth, you get to F, it's got 1 flat. That flat happens to be B flat. So when we go down another fifth, we don't go to B, we go to B flat because it's already flat. That's got 2 flats. The second of those is E flat, so it's B flat and E flat. So when you go down another fifth, you go to E flat. So E flat's got 3 flats. You go down another flat to A flat's got 4 flats, and so on. So that's how it works in the key system. However, you can organize a bass line that kind of follows the general outline of the circle of fifths. So what I'm doing in this is to give you some examples on this page of how you can follow the left-hand side of that circle of fifths, going down in fifths. And by changing flats, sharps, and all the rest of it, you can get kind of different results that are quite useful. So in each of these examples, I'm starting in C major and I'm putting C in the bass. Then I sort of go down a fifth to F. Now you're thinking, well, you haven't gone down a fifth, you've gone up a fourth. If I went down a fifth, I'd come to F. So going up a fourth still gives me the same note. If I keep going down in fifths, I'm going to fall off the bottom of the piano in no time at all. So by going down in fifths, C, F, B, E, A, D, I've run out of notes now. But if I kind of go up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth, you can see that I could keep going all day long doing that, couldn't I? Because it stops me just going down in fifths for infinity. So at a very simple level, all you need to do is to say, there's my bass line. Start C, start anywhere else you like. Let's have no sharps, no flats. We'll kind of stay in C. We go up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth, down a fifth, and so on. And we just put a basic diatonic chord on each note. So we're putting a third and a fifth. So C, we're going to put C, E, G, then F, F, A, C, B, B, D, F, E, E, G, B, and so on. And then I'm just going to kind of space those notes out in the treble clef and just have 2 parts above the bass line. So I get this. So you can hear that's giving me a kind of basic chord sequence. It's also given me a melodic sequence. Da-dee, ta-dee, ti-dom, ba-dom. And a sequence in the bass line, because because I'm doing all these things as well, aren't I? So it's full of kind of sequential ingredients, if you like. It's also quite varied because the first chord is major, this is major, this is diminished, this is minor, this is minor, this is minor, this is major, this is major. So you get a bit of variety in the kind of tonality of the chords. Now you might listen to that and think, well, yeah, it's all right, but it's a bit boring, isn't it? Just doing chord, 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 chord. But of course, you can decorate that. So by using melodic notes around this framework, you could do something like this. Oh, and suddenly it's getting a bit more interesting. You could even have your bass moving. You don't have to do the same thing in every bar and every measure. You could kind of vary that as well. You could have the top part moving here, the middle part moving there, the bass part moving there. In other words, this is just a basic framework from which you can kind of generate something that is kind of quite an inviting sequence that's got a bit more rhythmic interest, a bit more melodic interest, a bit more contrapuntal interest, movement between the different parts. So that's how you could form a basic sequence using the outline pattern of the circular fifths. But there's more you can do, because if we look at this version, well, you see what I've done here, exactly the same thing. But this time I'm using the flats. Remember I said when you go around the left-hand side of the circular fifths, you start with C, you go down a fifth to F, you go down a fifth to B flat, a fifth to E flat, a fifth to A flat, a fifth to D flat, then you go to G flat and to C flat. So by using those flats, we can slightly alter it. So what we get in the second version is this. That's giving it a different flavour. Let me compare the first version on the top line with that second version. Here's the first version. All in the key of C. Now we're moving. And that's a great way to visit a whole load of keys pretty quickly, isn't it? Because what are we doing? We're in C major, tonic chord going to the subdominant chord. Then we've got a B flat major chord, which is sort of called 5 in E flat major, going to the tonic chord of E flat major. Then we're sort of going the dominant chord of D flat major to the tonic chord of D flat major. Then we're kind of going to C flat major. So you see, this is the same sequence, but by adding those flats, we've got a load of key change going on as we go. So again, you can decorate that, make it sound more interesting. But this is a nice basis for which you can kind of base something on if you want to. Say I kind of didn't want to do something as plain as stay in C major, but I didn't want to do something as adventurous as let's have a different key in every bar. But I was sort of thinking, well, I kind of think I'd quite like to be based in sort of C major, but in the middle I'll have plenty of G major. Well, you could just say, well, if I'm in G major, what I need is an F sharp. So if I make my Fs into F sharps, well, how does that work? Well, this is what happens this time. And suddenly it's got a totally different feel to it, isn't it? So especially with some decoration. You see what I'm doing there? You have your bass line. Different things you could do with it. But there's kind of just on this page, I'm just giving you 3 different versions of the same thing. So let's put all 3 together. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. They're all doing the same pattern, but they're generating different kind of outcomes for us. So what I'm trying to suggest here is, first of all, have you thought about writing sequences as a way of kind of getting from one place to another in a piece? Maybe a way of developing some of your material. Have you thought about using it based on the circle of fifths by going successively round the left-hand side or successively round the right-hand side? And then have you thought about these possibilities of, well, what happens if I change accidentals and hop through a load of different keys, or stay in the same key, or just use one accidental that takes me to one other key? You see how flexible it is and how the circle of fifths gives you this pattern. And by taking a bass line that doesn't just keep going down in fifths, but goes up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth, down a fifth, and so on, or the other way around, you get a bass line that's kind of manageable. So it's just a really useful compositional technique. It's good for players to be able to spot where they're playing sequences, so you can kind of see and hear how it's working out in a piece that you're playing, but it's a really useful tool for composers as well. So I hope that's adding something useful to your musical and compositional repertoire. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, let me invite you to visit the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. And if you get there, well, you might well want to have a look at our courses. You might also want to have a look at our Maestros program. 3 levels of Maestros, nothing to do with ability, but all to do with levels of engagement. So level 1 is a kind of light engagement. You get early access to videos, you get fun things like emojis, you sort of feel a stronger part of the Musical Matters international community, which is a wonderful place to be. You might want to go a step further to level 2. All the benefits of level 1 are yours. Level 2 comes with extra benefits, including access to a monthly live stream where I teach for an hour, usually on topics that have been suggested by members of the group. So it's your chance to say, I really want to know about this. Can we spend an hour discussing that and learning more about it? Yes, we sure can. Live chat running, you can ask your questions, make comments, see what other people are saying, get to know other people in the group. Absolutely wonderful community. Go a further step if you want to level 3. You have all the benefits of level 2 and of level 1. You get discounts on our courses. You also have access to an extra live stream every month, which is really individually tailored. You can hand in your own composition, your own arrangement, your own harmony exercise, your own recorded performance, whatever it is that you would really value having one-to-one personal feedback on. And that's what I will do in that second live stream. We share the material with everybody in the group. Everybody's deeply respectful of everybody else's work, which is wonderful. And we all learn from each other. And it's amazing how many composers and performers have thought, oh, that's been really interesting listening to that, looking at that score. I've learned something that I'm going to have a go at now. And hopefully the individual feedback is also useful. It's amazing how composers in that group have really progressed when they've been a member for a while. So it's a great group to be a part of. You realize that other people all over the world share your successes and your struggles. Helps you just to feel that you're not just, on a lonely trail with all this. There are many other people out there, and they're a wonderful group of people. Do come and join them. It's all at Maestros, www.mmcourses.co.uk.